So welcome. This is going to be an interactive experience. So make sure you chew your food well. As mentioned, my name is Latesha Lipscomb, and I have had the honor and privilege of serving as Community Engagement Project Manager in Heartside. And Heartside is a neighborhood that is located in downtown Grand Rapids. It's in the heart of the city. It's the city center, and pretty soon we're going to get involved in that conversation so I can let you guys know about the initiative that I've been privileged to lead there. But first and foremost, let's have a little bit of background information about today's discussion and what we hope to achieve. So, what is equitable development? Our office has decided that when we achieve equitable development, we are able to increase the capacity of people of color to strengthen their communities and determine their own future and that of their neighborhoods. That is really important. I'm just going to add a little 2 cents here because I think oftentimes in this work we find ourselves telling people how they should live or how they need to live instead of engaging in efforts to really find out how people want to live. And so the first matter of achieving that equity is making sure you have voices at the table and that you're listening to them. We distribute the benefits and burdens of growth equitably among people of all races, ethnic backgrounds, incomes, and geographies/neighborhoods. We encourage multicultural communities where tenured and newcomer residents can thrive. And we provide meaningful choices for the most impacted people of color to live, work, and define their own culture throughout all neighborhoods. So that is a definition that came from the Government Alliance on Race and Equity. And as a city moving forward in our efforts to become a top of mind city, it is a kind of a mission and a value statement that we take very seriously. So with that being said, Heartside Quality of Life, such a fun and amazing project. Heartside Quality of Life involved neighbors, residents, stakeholders, anybody in the community that live, worked, or play in the neighborhood we wanted to hear from. And so we started off with a very cool opportunity to just go around and just listen, like say, hey, what is your experience like as you live in this particular neighborhood? We started off with a committee of stakeholders that decided we wanted to tap into certain demographics, right? Heartside is a very diverse neighborhood. It's practically made up of mostly renters, and it is a lot of mixed use in the neighborhood. So we knew we needed to hear from the faith demographic. We needed to hear from hospitals. We even wanted to hear from young professionals. So we created a session that was kind of like a networking happy hour type setting so that we would ensure we would be able to get young professionals to come and weigh in on the conversation. Some of the most interesting and the most powerful ones for me, however, was the opportunity to go into the shelters and to speak with people that are currently experiencing homelessness, and it really opened our eyes and enabled us to learn a variety of different things that we did not know going in. For example, one of the biggest problems that we face in the Heartside neighborhood is the fact that there are not enough public restrooms. So unfortunately, we have a pee and a poop problem. And so we have been trying to design ways or work on different collaborations with other entities so that we can create more restroom opportunities for the general public in Heartside. And so in one of those listening sessions, we were kind of presented with questions like, well, what do you do when a family is homeless out on the street and the public restroom doesn't have a baby changing station? Or what about women that may be on their menstrual cycle and they don't have access to the products or feminine hygiene products that they might need? Some people might say, well, hey, that's a real big deal. We just want to get a restroom inside of a neighborhood. But at the same time, when you're talking about equity, when you're talking about fairness, when you're talking about what's from the heart reaching the heart, these are all considerations that are very important. And when we're talking about design and development, we won't know unless we ask the questions and unless we're open to listening. So the listening sessions were really, really awesome. We hosted a total of 14 of them. We had 203 participants, which is unprecedented in the Heartside neighborhood. Never before had these people even been asked about what their living experience is like, and never before had we been in a position where as a city we could gain so much momentum. The second phase involved a neighbor knowledge exchange, right? So one of the things that we discovered is that people don't know what they don't know. And when you engage in active, authentic listening, where you're really open to the possibilities of redesigning neighborhoods, you learn a lot of information. And so that was a 2-day event that we hosted at 106 South Division Avenue, which is the old art gallery space that used to be owned by Calvin College. Currently, there is not a tenant in that building, and so every now and then we use that space to engage the community. The Neighbor Knowledge Exchange was an opportunity for different agencies and organizations that offer a variety of different resources to come into one space, and on the first day they were able to kind of just exchange that information with neighbors. And on the second day, that day was hosted by the city, and that was my opportunity to go back into the neighborhood and say, hey, this is what we thought we heard you say. Did we get this thing right? Another thing about equity and inclusion, you want to not only listen to people, but you want to make sure you're making a very targeted effort to affirm what people have said. And so we found that 189 people came back to listen to me speak again. So that was really, really exciting because it gave us an opportunity to further engage people, and now we can start shaping visions and priorities for the neighborhood. Never before had Heartside engaged in a process where we were trying to get people on the same page to create a shared vision for the future state of the neighborhood, right? You've got low-income people in Heartside. You've got people that can afford a market rate apartment. You've got young professionals. You've got people that have lived in the neighborhood for years. You even have people that have been homeless in shelters for 20 years or more. So it's a wide variety of perspective and personality. And so it took a very unique approach in order to make the quality of life study successful. Part of that unique approach involved hiring somebody like me. I am a single mom who has lived in the neighborhood since 2011. I live in one of the newer buildings that is managed by Live Downtown Grand Rapids. I'm a small business owner because I have a live workspace unit. So I help subsidize the cost of my education by painting faces. So I started doing makeup very early on. And so one day I might be changing the life by the stroke of my blush brush, and the next day I'm out here pounding the pavement trying to affect change from a grassroots level. That's just me. That's my perfect combination in my own head of beauty and brains. And so as a result of that, you have somebody from the neighborhood that has stepped over safer crack kits, that recognizes that Peckage Park as a pocket park causes some problems in the neighborhood. So when you take somebody that resides in the situation and you give them an opportunity to engage their neighbors, it makes your process all the more effective. So that's part of the reason I feel we have been successful. We did something that has never been done before. At the Neighbor Knowledge Exchange, we gave people that came back an opportunity to engage in dot voting activities. So we asked a ton of questions. We provided a map of the neighborhood, and we gave them red dots, and we said, okay, what areas could be improved? And then we gave them a complimenting card that basically gave them an opportunity to explain why they placed the dot where they placed it and how they would like to see change occur there. Another thing that we did was we provided an asset mapping activity. And so we created these little people diagrams, and we asked them to put on the front of that person their name, how long they've lived in the neighborhood, and what skill set they have. Now that might seem little or trivial, but when you really think about it, when you're trying to develop a relationship with Miss Johnson and you have an opportunity to ask her name, you find out that Miss Johnson has been in the neighborhood for 12 years, and then you also find out that 10 of those years, she served as I don't know, an administrative assistant somewhere for a major company. And just recently, she became unemployed. Well, think about it. That is a way to engage Ms. Johnson and possibly encourage her to make a positive contribution to the neighborhood association. It's a way that we could survey the land in order to build resident voice and also to build the leadership capacity for people in the neighborhood. So it was very important for us to understand what assets we have in people that live in the neighborhood. And then finally, which will lead me into the next phase, we gave people 10 dots and we said, okay, these are all of the things that kind of bubbled to the top as issues in the neighborhood. And we instructed people to vote on the themes that resonated the most with them. So whatever issue came up that really struck a chord with people, we encouraged them to put a dot there. And so that led us up to the theme-based work groups. We ultimately ended with 7 of those. 5 of the 7 work groups continued to meet beyond the end date because that's just how energetic and passionate we found that the people were about improving quality of life in this neighborhood in particular. So some of the issues that we addressed were fresh food access, because the neighborhood said that there's not enough access to fresh fruit, meat, and vegetables at an affordable price. We took a look at neighborhood building and activation because there are so many vacant spaces along the Division corridor, and we want to find ways to activate those buildings, and we want to end loitering and drug activity that happens there. Unfortunately, the corner of Division and Weston, 12% of all of the city's crime in terms of burglaries, robbing, all of that type of stuff happens right there on that corner. So we are fully aware that we have to do something different in the neighborhood. We had an engaged and employed work group because we're noticing that the streets are becoming younger and younger, and we want to find ways to connect people in the neighborhood with trauma-informed employers. So we've really been working hard on that. In addition to that, we had public restrooms, which is a major issue, and a couple of other work groups. And so these are all themes that kind of bubbled to the top. They're further outlined on the handout that you received. And so if you want any more information about those, feel free to ask me. I love talking about it, obviously. And so all of this has basically been culminating in my baby that I've been working on for quite some time, which is a final report. And so my boss kind of refers to the quality of life study as an ASP light. And the reason it's an ASP light is because it's not typical, right? It's not traditional. It's not an approach that anybody has taken before, but we can take all of the information and the data, which I often say is nothing more than stories with a soul, and we can put that together and we can present that to collaborative partners and funders in order to push final recommendations through. So the work groups were each tasked with the responsibility of coming up with 3 to 5 final recommendations that they think would change or improve the neighborhood. And so that's the phase that we were currently in, and we kind of wrapped up. But as I mentioned earlier, several of the work groups are just so enthralled with the change that you can already see in Heartside that they have not stopped working. And that makes me very excited. The final report will be released by the end of the month. It will be available in hard copy and it will be available online. So if you've ever wondered what the people of Heartside think in terms of what would better their quality of life, you definitely want to make sure you check out the final report. And so like I said earlier too, part of my phase 4 for me has just been going around kind of educating people about the neighborhood, facilitating those work groups. We have been lucky enough to have a great amount of media coverage, and part of that comes from the fact that, again, Heartside has a negative stigma attached to it. And so one of the final recommendations from neighborhood building and activation was to make sure that we are sharing more positive stories. And so outside of recently some of the issues that Lucky's Liquor Store has faced, all the work has been very, very positive. And work groups have been even meeting with the owners of Lucky's, and they have made substantial changes to try to better their business practices in Heartside. Community involvement has been at an all-time high, so it's just been a real privilege to watch. I've watched neighbors who started out knowing very little about neighborhood building, who were not civically engaged. It has been an honor to just watch them blossom. Now we have neighbors participating in just about everything, from food policy council meetings to housing now. Pretty much now there's a Heartsider involved in just about every initiative that's happening in the city. This all comes from just including them in the process. Public spaces and action projects. I don't know if I'm the reason that's jumping. One of the things I would just like to highlight is we had a unique opportunity to collaborate with KCAD, the Masters of Architecture program. And so one of the things that the neighbor said is that there is not enough information. We don't know what's going on. We don't know how to get connected to critical resources right away. We need centrally located information. And so what we decided to do was partner with KCAD to create a pop-up info board. The info board is amazing. It provides wayfinding information. It provides a place where we can actually tack up flyers about upcoming events. At the bottom, it has an incredible mission statement that the work group created about how they would like to see people behave in Peckage Park or behave in our neighborhood. Because while there is a school of thought that says, okay, let's collaborate, let's work, let's make this happen, let's just keep it real. Some people feel you could paint Peckage Park in gold and it would not change any of the drug activity or the social behaviors that happen there. And so as a result, as a community, we decided to create this statement about what we expect from our neighbors and people that are in Peckage Park. In addition to that, the chalkboard sign represents an opportunity for us to collect feedback. So people go through the neighborhood and anything they want us to know about what's happening in the community or any change we can make, anything we should be aware of, we have strategically placed chalk there, and so you would be surprised at some of the recommendations that we get that just come out of nowhere. You know, sometimes the best ideas are from the people you don't even ask. So this was a creative way to ask people what they think on a consistent basis. Neighborhood leadership. So one of the things we've been focusing on, again, is not only building resident voice, because we have to take into consideration what people think instead of just assuming, but we've put a lot of energy as a city into building neighborhood associations. There was a grant that was provided from the Kellogg Foundation, and so as a result of that, Heartside is one of the neighborhoods that was listed under that grant to receive some extra funding and some extra special attention so that we could form a neighborhood association. This is really important because we anticipate that after the quality of life study is completely wrapped, we wanted to be able to make sure that people had enough wind beneath their wings that they could carry the work forward as a neighborhood on their own. So you got to always have a system in place for future planning in any initiative that you start. And so final report, again, that's going to be available by the end of January. One of the things that I did is I just kind of instituted this whole hashtag about being Heartside strong, with an emphasis on heart and another emphasis on strong, because I believe that this work is not about empowering people. This work is about helping people recognize the power that already resides within them. So it's just lifting that voice. It's reminding people that may have forgotten that there is a place for you in the process. And it's about creating those tables, those equitable tables, and inviting people to have a seat at the table. Not just to be there, not just to physically see them, but to give them the opportunity and the permission to weigh in on the process. And so with that, that's a wrap for Heartside Quality of Life. Thank you so much for your time.